Welcome back, everyone. Hope everyone got something to eat and is ready for our keynote speaker. I wanted to introduce John Morales, who is here from Target. Target has been a great sponsor of Subiendo now for 2 years, and we're so grateful that he is able to join us today. So, John, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. We are trying something new this year, and we wanted to embrace the learning and development that takes place at Subiendo, and to enhance your communication skills, we are allowing our students to introduce our keynote speakers. So we have today Zaid Yamas, who is a B, Group Bs. Where's your motto and everything you're supposed to say when they hear? Oh, there we go, okay. So our Bs, Zaid is from Pleasanton, and he is now going to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you, Zaid.
I would like to introduce Ambassador Hector E. Morales, Jr. Ambassador Morales received his BA from Columbia University and his JD from the University of Texas. He's the Vice Chairman of Global Service Associates and is currently of counsel at Baker and McKinsey in Washington, D.C., and an advisory board of the Latin America program at Woodrow Wilson Center in D.C. Previously, he has served as the U.S. Permanent Representative to the Organization of American States and was lead negotiator for President Bush and Obama and in preparations for the 5th Summit of the Americas. Give a warm welcome for Mr. Hector E. Morales.
Thanks a lot. Good job.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. That was not very good. Let's try that again. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. All right. Buenas tardes. Mejor. It's a real honor to be back to Austin. Some of you may have heard this, but for those of you that have not, my family actually now lives in Austin. My parents are here, and my wife's family are also here. So it's a real treat to be here with you, because I think the Subiendo program is terrific, but obviously for personal reasons, to have a chance to be back with family and with friends is also an added pleasure. I want to thank Leticia for the opportunity to be here, as well as all of the various people associated with Subiendo, but there are a couple of people that I want to point out in particular. And I think what you will find as you get older in life, nothing happens with a lot of help from a lot of friends. And I have 2 friends here today who I think very highly of. They give me a hard time, but I know it's because they like me. At least that's what they say. And one of those is Jim Bayless, who's at the table that I was eating at. And the other is Miguel Romano, who's at the back there. It's an important lesson for all of you, and this is what I thought I'd talk a little bit about this afternoon. You know, it's important to be prepared. It's important to have the skills in order to be successful. But what's also key is to make relationships and friends, because you never know when those are going to come in handy, and they can help you in good times, and they can also help you in bad. So the people that you're with today, I think is important in this program. Get to know as many of them as you can, and as you move forward, I think this is something that that you should try to follow. Let me. I thought what I'd do today is talk about 2 things, and then maybe give you some stories, and then at the end, maybe we can have a little bit of an exchange. The 2 things I want to talk to you about are skills, and the other is don't be afraid to take chances. And let me explain a little bit. When I talk about skills, I mean, clearly education is an important part of that. You're here in a great program. Subiendo is giving you an opportunity. You wouldn't be here if you weren't identified as somebody who has a lot of potential. But it's also up to you to continue to develop that potential, and you do that through different skills. And in my case, you know, I grew up, my dad's from Mexico. My dad is from San Luis Potosí. I lived in Mexico. Went to school in Mexico. But my mom is from New York. She's from New York City. And so I had a very diverse background. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was actually from Lebanon and grew up in Mexico. And on my mom's side, my mom's mom was Irish, and my mom's dad, my grandfather, was Czechoslovakian. So think about that combination: Czechoslovakian, Irish, Lebanese, Mexican. And if that's not confusing enough, I was actually born in Holland. So it's like when people say, well, where are you from? It's like, well, how much time do you have? But actually, it's great because it gave me exposure to a lot of different cultures. And because of the Mexican heritage, I had a chance to grow up with two languages. I grew up with Spanish, I grew up with English, and I'm sure a lot of you in this room have had a similar, or have a similar, background. And I didn't realize necessarily that this was something that was going to be helpful to me later in life, but I'll explain when I get there in a little bit how that was important. But the culture, the stories, the chance to live in another country were all really important. And then I got some lucky breaks. I got to go to a really good school. I went to Columbia. But I always thought, you know what, the rest of my life, where am I going to spend it? I thought I was going to spend it in Texas. So I came to the University of Texas Law School thinking that I was going to be a lawyer. But I also realized I had an interest in Latin America. So I started to look for work that was focused on Latin America, really Mexico, Texas. And so I got a job as a lawyer. And then, because of that opportunity, and this is where we talk about skills and then chances that you get. I was approached by a company in Houston because they had decided that they wanted to expand into Latin America. And I thought, you know, I've only been to Mexico. I haven't been anywhere else. And they said, well, you know, Hector, we're going to do stuff all over Latin America. And we have a problem because some people don't want to do this. Is this something that you would be willing to consider? So I had to make a decision. It was a risk. But I took the risk. I took the job. And about a year later, they said, you know what? We got a lot of business in Argentina. Would you think about moving to Argentina? And part of the reason was nobody wanted to move to Argentina. I thought, well, you know what? Why not? So I took a chance, and my wife and I, actually that was the bigger discussion with my wife, to be quite candid. But actually she said, you know what, Hector? This is a life decision. And what it meant was this is an opportunity for a new experience and a new adventure, and who knows, maybe from a business perspective, this will give you a chance to get exposure to other things. So we took that decision and we made that step. So we lived in Buenos Aires for 4 years. I'm not going to go in a whole lot of detail, but the point of these different decisions actually led me eventually to the government service. And if somebody had asked me, well, you know, Hector, when you graduated from law school, did you think that you were going to end up serving in government? The answer is no. It wasn't as if I had this, you know, very carefully plotted plan and with a timeline that said, okay, in so many years, this is what I'm going to do. I didn't have that. But what I did know is that I had an interest in a general field, and I was going to continue to look for opportunities that kept me in that general field. So what I did after that was I ended up joining a startup company. And people say, well, why would you do that? Well, it was a very interesting company that was focused on Latin America, and what it did was helped families, Hispanic families in the United States, send money back to relatives and friends in countries of origin in Latin America. And what we did, this was about 11 years ago, we developed a variable load. It was a card that allowed you to send money. So really very different experiences, but that microfinance remittances with energy combination was actually a terrific background for the Inter-American Development Bank. The IDB is like the World Bank for Latin America and the Caribbean. It's a $200 billion bank, and what it focuses on is helping countries throughout the hemisphere develop economically and socially. So it was a great experience because I got a chance to apply skills and background that I had learned in an area that was going to help other people. Did I know that I was going to do that? No. But it was a chance, and I took it, and I was very honored because it gave me also an opportunity to serve my country. I was picked by President Bush, I served, and after about 5 years, I was then asked to go to the Organization of American States. The OAS is a little bit like the UN for Latin America. And let me tell you about my first day working at the OAS. And this falls under the category of be careful what you ask for because sometimes you might just get it. The first day at the OAS, now keep in mind, this is an organization that is designed for diplomatic relations. It focuses on making sure that democracy is protected, focusing on elections, and also when there are crises in the hemisphere to try to resolve these problems. So what happened on day one? On day one, I get called into an emergency meeting because Colombia has decided to attack Ecuador. And the reason Colombia decided to attack Ecuador was because there was a FARC encampment. The FARC is a terrorist organization that has been in Colombia for many years, and they're very involved in developing and selling narcotics and arms. They kidnap and they bomb. And this FARC group, which is Colombian, was actually based in Ecuador. And Colombia decided that this was a threat to their livelihood. So Colombia, without asking for permission, went into Ecuador and bombed this camp. So the Ecuadorians didn't think that was a very good idea. In fact, they were incredibly upset. They said, "You have violated our sovereign territory. You cannot come in without any permission and do this." The Colombians said, "These are terrorists. You're harboring people that are here to destroy our country." This was my first day at work. I said, "Hector, what do we do?" And it's one of those moments where you think, oh my God, you know, these two countries could very easily go to war. But the good news is that there was an organization that was designed to try to resolve conflicts, no matter how difficult those conflicts might be. And what happened was there were a series of very intense negotiations, and my very first announcement took place at 3 in the morning after almost an all-night session. And we had reached the resolution. We had reached a resolution that avoided war, that allowed the countries to work together to find a way to resolve these differences, and also work on recognizing that these are threats that were not only threats to these two countries, but that were threats to the entire hemisphere, and that it required the support of all these countries to work together. So my first announcement was at 3 in the morning, and there was CNN en Español, Univision, all the cameras, and I'm thinking, oh my God, if this is my first day of work, what is the rest of this day going to be like? It turned out to be okay. And the silver lining actually in this story is the following. That bombing of that camp resulted in capturing very important information. The Colombian military captured flash drives and hard drives, and through that information that they were able to capture, they deciphered the codes that the FARC were using. And about 6 months later, actually it wasn't even 6 months later, it was on July 2nd, and I'll never forget this because we were celebrating the 4th of July, an announcement came that the Colombians were able to rescue 5 American hostages who had been held for more than 5 years by the FARC. And they did it in a really interesting way. What they did was the Colombians, using the information that they had gathered from this raid, tricked the FARC into thinking that they were also the FARC. And so they arranged for a hostage movement to a third-party location. And so the FARC moved the hostages to a third-party location. And then the Colombian military, disguising themselves as the FARC, met them. And at that point, they revealed that they were not the FARC, that they were the Colombian military, and they were able to rescue these 5 American hostages, and they'd also rescued a woman who had campaigned to be president of Colombia. An amazing thing. It was really an amazing thing, and you realized how important it is for people to be able to work together and also to avoid crisis and conflict. Now, as I said, did I know when I graduated from law school that this was something I was going to be doing? Absolutely not. An incredible experience. But because of the background and the skills and my education and also the willingness to take some steps, not knowing what was going to happen next, I had a chance to serve. And so the lesson, to the extent that I can share with you, is, it's okay not to know what's going to happen next. It really is. But don't be afraid. In fact, it's normal to be afraid. I have to tell you, I was incredibly nervous that first day of work. But be confident in your ability. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of where you come from. Take advantage of the opportunities that you have. And I think good things are going to happen. I know that they're going to happen. You got to work hard. It's not going to be easy. But you may have a chance to do incredible things. In fact, I know you'll have a chance to do incredible things. And quite frankly, I think that I wouldn't be surprised that someday, maybe one of you, maybe more than one of you, will have an opportunity to be standing where I am today to tell your story. I hope I'm here to hear about it. I don't want to bore you with any more details because I could keep you here all afternoon. And I know that you've got other things to do. But I thought maybe I would stop at this point and ask you if you guys have any questions or any comments, and I'll certainly try to answer them to the best of my ability. But again, I want to thank Subiendo, the program. I want to thank all of you for being here, and I want to congratulate you because I think this is a great program, and it's a real reflection on what you've been able to accomplish so far. But it's only the beginning. You got to keep going, and I'm sure you're going to be successful. So thank you very much.
How exactly did you get involved with that job that you were talking about, the one where you got nervous the first day? What led you to?
Yeah, no, I was what they call a political appointee. So what does that mean? In every administration, in every presidential administration, let me be more specific, the president has an opportunity to pick certain people that he wants, or maybe eventually she wants, on their team. And so what happens is you get asked if you would like to serve in a particular position, and then you submit yourself to an application process. It's a very rigorous application process that also involves a very deep background check that is conducted by the FBI, and it takes about 6 months. And then during that 6 months period, they don't tell you anything, so you don't know if things are going well or if things are going poorly. And then after the 6-month period, they then say, the White House is now going to make an announcement with your nomination. And what that means is that you are now, depending, because there are different types of appointees. There are some that can serve right away, and there are others that required confirmation by the Senate. And what that means is you, if you're a nominee that's subject to Senate confirmation, you have to go before a committee in the Senate, provide testimony, and then the Senate votes on whether or not you should be confirmed. The 2 positions that I held required Senate confirmation. So when I was at the Inter-American Development Bank, actually I had 2 positions at the bank, both of which required confirmation. So I was approached by the White House. I submitted my application. There was a competition, and ultimately I was picked. With the OAS, I actually was very fortunate, but because it was an emergency situation, I went through a process that's called hotlined. And there may be some of you here that know that, but what that means is usually in the confirmation process, after the hearing, your nomination goes to the full Senate, and then they eventually vote on you. And so all 100 senators have to vote. But it's not usually right away. That's another period that takes time. The point from when you get notified to the point that you can get confirmed can take as long as a year. In the case of the OAS, because it was an emergency situation, 2 senators, it was Senator Lugar and Senator Menendez, submitted my nomination to be hotlined. And what that meant was your nomination is circulated to all the other senators, and if in 24 hours nobody has an objection, you get confirmed. And that's what happened to me. So that's how the process worked. One other thing. Because you're an appointee and you serve at the pleasure of the president, I submitted my resignation after President Obama won. And President Obama's team then contacted me and actually asked me to stay. So I had a chance to serve both in the President Bush administration, and then for a while I served in the President Obama administration. Take one from over here. Yes?
I was wondering, what was the biggest issue you faced while you were there in Buenos Aires for those 4 years?
I'm going to answer that personally and professionally. The personal challenge was my wife loved Buenos Aires. She didn't want to leave. She really had fallen in love with Argentina, with the people and the culture. And after 4 years, it was clear that we were going to have to make a change. And we very seriously thought about staying. So that was one tough decision. The other hard decision was business-wise, had to do with an investment that we had in a tiny, it was a province. In Argentina, they call their states provinces. So we had an investment in this province, and the governor of the province was not respecting the investment that we had. We were running an electric distribution company, and we had a concession. We had a contract with the province, and the governor was basically breaching the terms of the contract. And so I tried to negotiate with the governor, and it was very difficult to do that. And eventually, it became impossible. So we thought that the only way that we were going to be able to resolve the problem was by suing Argentina. So we did it by filing arbitration. So there is a treaty that exists between Argentina and the United States. It's called the Bilateral Investment Treaty. And so under that treaty, the company that I worked for filed arbitration against the country because provinces were divisions, considered divisions of the country. That was a pretty hard decision to go home after work one day and say, guess what I did today? I sued the country of Argentina. But it worked out. Yes?
Did you ever find yourself not liking the political atmosphere, the maybe conflicts amongst other people, just the intensive competition that led you maybe to direct your career in a different path?
When I said that there were moments where things went well and there were things that didn't go well, sure. Government is a great honor and it does some great things, but there are also aspects of it that can be very frustrating. And that's in our own government as well as when you're dealing with other countries. My experience in serving in government was what they call multilateral. And so at the two institutions where I served, at the Inter-American Development Bank and then at the Organization of American States, the owners of these institutions, the shareholders, if you will, are countries. So the United States is a shareholder. It happens to be the biggest shareholder of the bank, as well as the largest contributor to the Organization of American States, but it's not the only member. At the IDB, there are 48 countries that are members of that institution. So imagine what it's like to negotiate with 48 other parties. Kind of hard. Same thing with the OAS. There are 34 active members. There are 35 countries, by the way, in the Western Hemisphere. But you also have permanent observers. And so there are countries from other parts of the world that are active in these organizations. So negotiating with all of these different people can be very hard. And one other thing, at the bank, the negotiations were you would vote your percentage ownership. So if there was a decision, because the United States owned 30%, I would vote 30%. At the OAS, it's one country, one vote. So as big as the US is, it only had one vote. So if I was negotiating with St. Lucia or St. Vincent and the Grenadines, didn't matter, they have one vote. So that became challenging as well. In the back?
Hi there, I'm Carlos Gillian. Being chosen as yours is a great honor, but what do you think in your studies and your experiences distinguish you from everyone else to be selected?
Wow. Look, I think preparation is certainly important. I think there's luck involved. I won't deny it. But I think part of that luck is also based on and I'm sure you've heard this, where preparation meets opportunity. But the other element to it, and it's what I said at the beginning, it's relationships, friends, and contacts. And I would not have gotten these jobs but for the help of a lot of people. So I think in my case, they were able to help me because they felt that I was qualified, but it also was important that they felt it was important that I have a chance to do these jobs. So that's why networking is so important. Meeting people, not only your own age, but meet other people, younger, older, in different walks of life. I think as you move on in education, you will see that you will learn as much from the people, not only from your teachers, but from the people in your own classroom and from work. So I think those were the things that probably were able to set me apart. Yes?
Had you always wanted to become a lawyer, or like at what point, what made you interested in law?
Yeah. You know, I didn't always want to be a lawyer. In fact, my dad's a doctor. And he said, "Oh my God, you want to be a lawyer?" And I said, "Look, not all lawyers are bad." You know, when I graduated from college, I really wasn't sure. I was torn between wanting to go to business school and wanting to be a lawyer. And what I didn't realize at the time, in a way, I probably didn't have to make that decision, because today, and in fact, the University of Texas offers a great joint degree. You can get a JD and an MBA if you want to, or you can get a legal degree and you can get a master's in public policy. But at the time, the reason I chose the legal profession was because I felt that it would give me the most options. So it wasn't as if I felt like I want to be a trial lawyer or I wanted to be a judge. I didn't know that. I just thought that this training in terms of how to think analytically, look at problems, would be, I think, a good approach. And I think also, in the back of my mind, I always felt that I wanted to do something that would help others. And the legal profession has a great tradition in that area. Obviously, others do as well. And then the last point was I thought I was going to live in Texas. And so, Texas has a great law school and a great program, great alumni, and I thought this would be a very good place to go. Plus, it was a chance to come back home. Yes, sir.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak Spanish, I speak English, eu falo português também, Portuguese, and I took 4 years of French, and French is important. Unfortunately, my French is very rusty. But that's a really important point. In Texas, and as you well know, and many of you are either live on the border or close to the border or have a connection to Mexico, international relations are incredibly important. Understanding other cultures are very important. And a vital way to do that is by learning a language. When I talked about skills that I didn't realize were going to help me later on, the fact that I grew up speaking Spanish and English was a phenomenal asset that I was fortunate enough to grow up with. And it doesn't mean that if you don't do that, that's a negative. No. But if you have an opportunity to develop that language, I think another language skill, I think you should. And when I grew up speaking Spanish, it was social Spanish. And when I started to work, in a way, I had to learn another language, which was the technical side. But it was certainly one of those factors growing up that made a big difference in my life. Yes, in the back.
What helped you the most prepare for your current career?
Wow. I'm an optimist. I'm really one of these people that no matter how bad it gets, I always think something positive is going to turn out. I'm a very positive thinking person. That doesn't mean that I don't have bad days. I do. That's normal. But I think I'm a curious person. I like taking challenges, and I think that attitude has helped me out a great deal. But again, because of that, it's also helped me meet a lot of really interesting people, and I do a lot of volunteer work in addition to my job, and no matter, I find meeting people is fascinating because everybody has a great story. Whether you're an incredibly accomplished professional or whether you're somebody who doesn't have that kind of a background, what I have learned is that there are all kinds of interesting stories, and you can learn from all of these people.
Hi, my name is Victoria, and I was wondering, a lot of the times what pushes some of us to succeed is a role model to look forward to and that they inspire us. I was wondering if there's anybody that has inspired you.
Well, there's several people. I think I would start with my parents. I didn't want to bore you with like these, family stories, but and I think all of you probably can talk about interesting stories in your own family. But in the case of mine, my grandfather grew up during the Mexican Revolution. He didn't get to finish education. He was somebody who had to work very hard, and then lost it all. And then my dad, born and raised in Mexico, put himself through school, didn't know what he was going to do next, so he came to the United States in pursuit of a better education. And I'm sure in his wildest dreams, he never thought he was going to marry somebody from New York City. I'm sure he was convinced going to go to New York, going to study, and then come back to Mexico, and my whole life's going to be in San Luis Potosí, and that's going to be it. And he meets my mom. And my mom's parents are a great story in and of themselves. My mom grew up in a one-bedroom house in Queens, and so you get these two people that they were fortunate in that they had some opportunities, but in other ways they didn't have a whole lot of background, and they moved to Europe. I was born in Europe. My sister was born in Mexico. My brother was born in the United States. And you look at what they were able to accomplish. That's a real something really to look up to. Mr. Bayless. I should be afraid.
For the benefit of all of you all, I have a little bit of advantage because I've known Hector through all the stages of his remarkable career. But whereas every experience that you've related builds on your prior experiences and prior opportunities, tell the audience what you're doing now, whereby you have harnessed all of your business and governmental experiences and world travel, because the movie keeps on going. His life is substantial and a source of tremendous pride among his friends like me, but it continues. Whereas you all are in the early stages of your movies, remember that everything that you're doing now, that you're going to be doing in a year from now, in 5 years from now, build on what you previously have done. So tell the audience, Hector, a little bit about what you're doing now, having harnessed all of those myriad experiences and having expanded your already broad horizons globally.
When you were going with the movie analogy, I hope you weren't saying I'm now at the film credits of my life. As you heard from the introduction, I work with a law firm. It's called Baker & McKinsey. It's a very large global law firm that has offices in 70 cities around the world. In Latin America alone, Baker & McKinsey has 20 offices. I am of counsel there, and then I also work with a firm called Global Strategic Associates, and what they do is help companies and funds look for opportunities for investment around the world, and my area of focus is Latin America. So we work with private equity, we work with companies, and I do that out of Washington, D.C., but I travel quite a bit all over Latin America, to Mexico, to Brazil, to Argentina, Colombia, Peru. And because my colleagues also work in other parts of the world, in Asia, for example, I've also traveled to China, I've been to Japan. And again, when I was growing up, never in a million years did I think I'd ever have a chance to do these things. But it's very interesting to be able to work with companies and help them look at opportunities in other parts of the world and see those economies develop. I'll give you an example. I mean, Brazil. You all know Mexico because it's very close, and Mexico is doing quite well. Just a footnote, the G20. There's a very important meeting that's taking place today and tomorrow in Los Cabos. This is a leaders meeting of the 20 most important economies in the world. And Mexico is hosting. It's very significant because Mexico is a emerging leader in the world on a number of issues, and obviously economic issues are one of them. In fact, the Mexican economy did very, very well and is doing extremely well, notwithstanding it's got challenges. But you've got vibrant middle classes that are generating opportunity, and there are investors who want to know how to do business there, and so they look for people to provide them advice. And I happen to be one of these people that is privileged enough to work with these groups. So again, these are just different things that have happened along my life that now I'm applying, as Jim says, in this role with these two organizations. Yes, in the back.
As seniors in high school, we're all looking forward to going to college and, finding our way in lives. So can I ask you, what are some traits that made you study hard and be successful throughout college? Because I know it's going to be difficult for some of us.
Yeah.
So what are those traits and how did you, strengthen them?
Well, I don't want to give you the impression that, I studied hard. But believe me, I was tempted not to. There was always a lot of reasons to do other things. But I happened to have a chance to go to school with people who were very motivated. And so that served as an example of how to do things. I saw, whether it was through my father or friends who were older and some of the things that they had accomplished and what it took to get there. And look, there's just no, believe me, if I could tell you that there's an easy way to do it, believe me, I would have found it. There just isn't. I mean, there's just no substitute for working hard. And I think what differentiates folks is when you get a setback, how do you react? You know, do you let that keep you down, or do you keep going? And so, as I said, I was always somebody who felt, okay, no matter how hard it got, I was going to keep going. I took a lot of motivation from my classmates and from my professors. You know, this is something else. I had some great mentors. You asked me, I thought about this. I had a great English high school teacher who pushed me to think about going to school, to certain schools that I never would have thought of. And the reason I met him is because we had an in-class essay, and I thought I'd done a really good job on my report, and he gave me a D. And I said, "You got to be kidding me." So I was, you know, very indignant, and I went up to him and I said, "You know, you have got the wrong guy here." He said, "You know, I read the assignment. You cannot give me a D." And he said, "You know what, Hector? I know you read the assignment, but you didn't tell me anything about it." And so what he said, "You gave me plot summary. Basically, you just repeated what was there." He said, "I wanted to get your thoughts about what you had read." And it made me think. I thought, okay, but I still don't think I deserve a D. But he said, "Look, if you want to get better, this is what you got to do." And so fortunately I did, and I got better, and I moved on. So okay. Thank you very much. Buena suerte. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. We appreciate you being with us.
On behalf of all the Subiendo students of class of 2012, thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. All right.
I think you'll hear from his story that it takes a lot of hard work, and your next session ties in both the political sector as well as the business sector. And I think by you creating your business that you will this afternoon, we'll see how important it is to bridge these two together and finding solutions that'll help create a better place for all of us. So again, thank you, Ambassador. We appreciate you being with us. And what we will do next is have a quick 5-minute break so everyone can go ahead and stretch your legs a little bit, and then we'll get back and start our simulation that'll start here about 1:35. So everyone make a quick beeline and then come back, and we appreciate everyone being here, and we'll have the staff come in and bus the table, so just leave everything there. Thank you.